This podcast is hosted by Sheza Barbour, co-founder of Good Tree Institute, and joined by licensed therapist Archie Aquino and our resident scholar and founder, Dr. Nadia Qatranji.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome again to another episode of Timeless Conversations with Good Tree Institute. I'm here with Dr. Nadia Qatranji, Archie Aquino, and me, Sheza Barbour, your host. Today we're going to keep continuing the story of Yusuf and all of his challenges and what we can learn from. And right now, this episode, we are going to delve into Yusuf's demeanor while he was in prison. And how did he react when he was being wronged? And then what do we learn how do you deal with that if you're in a situation like that? So right now in this episode, we're at the point of the story where he is in jail. And there are some highlights that we want to point out while he was in jail. So first, let's kick off with kind of highlighting the story first of where we're at. Dr. Nadia, do you want to go ahead and kick us off with that?
Yes. Assalamu alaikum. So absolutely, yeah. So where we were at is where Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam chose, right? He said, no, I'm going to go with this, with being in prison rather than falling for these women. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitated in a way that they kind of like fabricated things for him and he got into prison. Now, when he was in prison, it seems that it was early on because Allah says it right away, وَدَخَلَ مَعَهُ السِّجْنَ فَتَيَانِ. So as he was entering the prison, there are two young men who entered with him. They approached him right away and they were kind of like saying to him, okay, I have this dream and why don't you help us understand it? نَبِّئْنَا بِتَأْوِيلِهِ. Help us interpret it. And then they made this comment at the end, which we've heard so many times about Yusuf alayhi salam, إِنَّا نَرَاكَ مِنَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. We are seeing that you are among those who are muhsinin. Muhsin, remember the word hasuna denotes beauty. So we are from the ones who do good and beautiful, the ones who are good and beautiful. And it's so interesting that they just saw it right away. They just saw that aspect right away. And that's what we just wanted to kind of like say, okay, well, I mean, somebody going into prison and having that attitude and having that that demeanor is very and people right away just noticing it is extremely beautiful and it's like when you're in such a tough situation and you're like that, it means that you can actually carry this way of being, this persona anywhere if you were able to do it in prison. So we wanted to learn from Yusuf alayhi salam. How was he able to be that? What is it that had him be a muhsin? Why was he able to not just be suffering and saying, okay, I am in this situation, look what they have done to me, and now here I am, not only by my brothers, and now here I am just again being thrown in prison because of all of what happened. So what is it that had him be like that? What is it that had him have that capacity?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's, Sayyidina Yusuf, he didn't have a breakdown or a meltdown about his situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he was so connected to Allah and he understood that there was like a higher purpose of what he's going through, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is that what they saw? Like, because I get a little hung up on like as soon as he walked in, they're like, "Oh, he's a Muslim." What did they see?
Yeah, that's the interesting part, right? And I think all of us can attest to this. When you see, especially in dire situations, like if you're in a party and everybody's happy, that's not a problem. But if you're in prison and you're seeing somebody with this demeanor, it's like, okay, definitely they saw a person with peace, a person who is not depressed, a person who is, you have that being that you're just not, you're content. Of course, when you're in prison, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be, oh, it's fun. It's not comfortable. However, there's that inner peace, and it's the inner peace that really can show up on you. It can actually radiate. And obviously that's what happens. And I think every one of us can attest to that. When you see people, it's like there's something about this person. Despite the fact that it's a very tough situation, this person is very calm. And we get attracted to these kinds of people. We get attracted to seeing something like that.
Okay. Yeah, there's like a stability to someone like that. There's something to hold on to.
Yeah, and Yusuf is used to constantly being, wronged and victimized and thrown under the bus and all of that kind of thing. All of his life has been like that. But it seems that his core was so clear, right? It's just like there was something about him that had him be like that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Like, he's so used to having bad things happen. He just kind of rolled with it. Thrown in a well, yeah. Sold into slavery, yeah. Put in prison, okay.
Right.
And we can't even handle one little test, of somebody even saying something to us, and we all go into a tizzy.
And it's interesting. We've seen even in our days, there are people who encounter similar situations, and we've heard about them. We've heard about how their demeanor was, how their attitude is, and how they just like, I have to stay positive. I have to be like that. And the people that I know, it's coming from, again, knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a bigger plan. It's part of what he has put me into, and I'm just taking it and I'm accepting it. And this is a game changer when you come to anything, no matter how tough it is, with this understanding and with this trust.
Yeah, it's in counseling. It's always like if you're just about yourself and your emotions, you get kind of stuck and wrapped up in that. But if you have a connection to something bigger, a sense of purpose, or something like that, it just prevents that. You're able to see a bigger perspective.
Yeah, and we even I don't know if you guys have seen the Mauritanian. It was just like, it's an amazing thing to also see how somebody was basically falsely accused of being one of those who hijacked, who were from the hijackers in 9/11. Actually, the planners, not the hijackers, but the planners of the atrocity that happened in 9/11, and he had nothing to do with it, zero thing to do with it. They just put up some evidence somehow, kind of like knew that he had some links to some people and fabricated the whole thing. He had nothing to do with it, and stayed in prison for 13 years. And
Yeah,
go ahead.
It was incredible when I watched it because, like, yeah, they had some information about him being in the places where the organizers were, but like he just kind of went with it, and he never got so angry and bitter, and he was always trying to like defy being what they wanted him to be. That he was always defying just being a number. He was like, no, I want to know your name, and I'm a person, and he was always trying to find humanity and make people see his humanity, and that was like so powerful, right? Like, he's in this awful situation, being tortured day after day after day, hour after hour, sleep deprivation, and somehow he's able to just like still be himself and not get changed.
Totally. And I watched his interview with the actual person, and how he was saying it's like, because of, without this endeavor, without this situation that I was in the past 13 years, I could not be the person who I am right now. Yes, it was very tough. Yes, it was extremely hard. Yes, there were times where, he was exposed to a lot of not only physical torture, but psychological torture. And all of that was very hard. It was so tough for him. But he says, I cannot be the person who I am right now with my level of maturity, of capacity, of ability, all of the things that he is able to do. He said, I could not be that person without this trial and tribulation that I went through. Of course, nobody wants to be in things like that. But when things get thrown, it's either that I keep presenting and I keep feeling bad, or I do the best in it. And that's what he chose. He chose like, how can I get the best out of the situation that I'm in right now? I mean, the one that threw me off the most is that after he was proven to be innocent, he stayed 4 years in prison afterwards, and he was still smiling, and he was still fine.
Yeah, he was super happy when he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be released." And then subtitles, he's like, "And 4 years later, he was released." And it was like, what?
But
and he had the biggest smile on his face the whole time.
SubhanAllah.
I also wanted to bring up a point with the story of not just Sayyidina Yusuf, but also the example in the movie in the Mauritanian was kind of the aspect of like what made him get through it, right? The aspect of like your trust in Allah has to start early. Like for them, it was also embedded in their upbringing, right? It was part of their practice. It was part of their, livelihood even before these massive tests came to them. And it gives us also a clue of what are we supposed to be doing? Like how should we be ourselves, like practicing almost, like preparing ourselves and having that trust in Allah before the tests come. And, also for those of us with kids is how do we embed that in our children from an early age of like, let's, you got to practice this. You got to bring this up. It has to be a part of your soul, like your cells to have that. So when things come, you know how to deal with it.
Yeah, totally. I remember when I was in my younger years and I was kind of like studying the Quran, there's an ayah, a part that always kind of was very vague for me. Like, what does that mean? Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about how connecting to him, and he says that is so that you do not get overjoyed of things that are happening to you, and you do not get so sad about things that you are missing. And I'm just like, well, Rabbi, why don't you want people to be overjoyed? Just like I didn't understand it. But what afterwards, as life is happening, it just like started to come clear to me. It's like when you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your core, when your connection to him is your main thing in your life, you love him so much and you are trusting him so much that everything that's happening, whether things are amazing, alhamdulillah, they're happening, they're great, but that's not my real satisfaction. It's good, I enjoy it. But it's not to the point that, oh my God, that's the only reason why I'm happy. If it's not there, I'm not going to be happy. And that's where it clicked. And if this is happening, the reason I'm sad is because of this. If it goes away, that's it. I'm very good. It's like it becomes your emotions don't have so much a toll on you anymore.
Like they don't rule and control you.
Exactly. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you, you have a steady depth in you. And then all of these things come and go. There's sadness, there's happiness, there are all of these emotions, but they're not as deep. They're just like 10, 20%. For us, when you don't have Allah, when you don't have a solid core, it throws you off. It's a total swing.
Yeah.
And that's where Allah is saying, I don't want that for you. It's too much.
It is too
and
much.
And that's what people deal with, these kinds of traumatic things. When you don't have a solid core, you're not anchored.
Right.
Whereas you see people, I mean, look at the people who are dealing now with the suffering. It's amazing. I mean, people are just baffled. How are they able to tolerate all of that trauma?
And say alhamdulillah.
Their kids, and say alhamdulillah, and their kids are dying in front of them. Their homes are being bombed. How are they able to? Well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's because it's a bigger picture for me.
Right.
And to your point, by the way, subhanAllah, not even this, when your core is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's even more than that. Because when they told him, hey, we see you such a great person, look what he said. He said, yeah, well, I am great. That's how he started. Look, I'm just going to show you the part where he said it. He said, yeah, I am great. And he said, not even a food that you can get. لا يأتيكما طعام ترزقانه إلا نبأتكما بتأويله قبل أن يأتيكما. Not even the dream. Even I could tell you what the food that you're going to get before you even have it in front of you. But look what he does. He says, yeah, I'm so great. But he attributes it right away to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, ذَلِكُمَا مِمَّا عَلَّمَنِي رَبِّي. That is from what my caretaker has taught me. It's not from me. I'm great because I'm connected to my caretaker. That's where my greatness is coming from. And it's up to you. You can want to have your greatness just belong to you, and you will have to know that your greatness is very limited. But if you connect to the maker of the world, to the creator of the world, and you connect yourself to him, your greatness is unlimited. It's basically from him. You can choose which one you want. So that is so powerful, subhanAllah, just to understand this aspect.
And it keeps you from becoming conceited. I mean, you still have a sense of greatness, but you're not like, yeah, I'm great because I'm amazing. No, it's just, I'm great because I've been lucky and blessed enough to have these gifts or this ability. It was given to me. And yeah, you're not going to be like, I'm just amazing, so, worship me. It's not, no, it's about, I have this because of Allah. So we should be thankful for Allah, not for me.
Right.
Yep.
It makes those people or people like that more accessible, without making others feel inferior. So you become more approachable and they're more inspiring to be around because it's not, it's not narcissistic. It's not themselves. It's really, they're speaking on behalf of Allah almost, like, this is what you get.
Yeah, and it's real. You know how sometimes people
Right.
can try to fake it. Oh yeah, it's not me. It's about Allah, and it's really in reality like you're just like, yeah, I'm so great. When we're talking about is like I know how real Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, to the point that I'm just like seeing that He is the one who, from Him everything happens. Because of Him everything happens. What's in me that's so great is coming because He's adding it to me. I think a lot of the times it's kind of like when you talk about theoretically, a lot of people are just like, what are you talking about? Of course, it's me who has done that, and people may not understand it. It's you have to go through this experience to understand the fact of it and the truth about it. Because as you said, when you're arrogant and when you're just attributing things to yourself, guess what? At one point, we've seen a lot of people. You might lose all of that. With some kind of brain sickness, a person can lose all of that. Show me your greatness at that point. It's not real.
But
It's
then,
just
like,
temporary.
won't people think that because this person's a Muslim and there's something special, like the prophets, the Muslim, are they, they just have this ability to do this because they're not regular people? Is that like, isn't that kind of a way of just avoiding the ability or everyone's attempt to try to be that way? Like, oh, I can't do that because that person's special and I'm not.
Well, we just mentioned the example of the Mauritanian. He's not a prophet, and I think if you look around, you have people in your life who are like that. We always have these kinds of stories, and you're right. For me, I first see the people who are like me, and those are the ones that inspire me. And then we start to learn to have access to the prophets, peace be upon them. Because as you said, the first block that comes to us is like, okay, they're prophets. We can't really, yeah, they're different. Of course, they're going to be special. They're chosen. But when you see people like you who are demonstrating these manifestations and being able to be like that, then it's doable.
I'm just thinking about the people who would just always resign themselves. And I used to be like that. That's why I'm thinking about it. I used to be like, you know what, I'm not one of those people, so I'm not going to be able to do that. And I don't know at what point I decided that I'm going to start to try to be like that. But it did happen eventually. But it wasn't because I was trying to be special. I think it happened when I surrendered and I asked for purpose and I asked for, some direction. And then I just was more open to being that way.
And what you're mentioning a great point. It's not about seeking to be like that. It's more about seeking peace, seeking your fulfillment. It's more about seeking your depth. And when you get to understand and really explore who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and get to know that, that's where things open up. And I just, since you were mentioning this, I just want to highlight a part of the Quran here that actually takes a big part. When Yusuf alayhi salam, when they tell him, he doesn't answer their dream right away, by the way. What he does is he goes and he starts talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he starts saying, he says, oh, well, I left the religion of those people who don't believe in God, and I followed the path of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, peace be upon them all. He said, ما كان لنا أن نشرك بالله من شيء. We were not to associate with Allah for anything. He says, this is from the favor of Allah on us and on people. ذلك من فضل الله علينا وعلى الناس. ولكن أكثر الناس لا يشكرون. But the majority of people are not grateful. And the reason being is that a lot of the times people don't understand the value of having one God. That's why he explains it. Look what he says. I love this ayah, ayah 39. He says, يا صاحبي السجن, oh, the companions of the prison, أأرباب متفرقون خير? Having so many gods that you have to submit to and you have to listen to and you have to obey, is that better? أم الله الواحد القهار, or the one God that is the all-powerful? Which is better? Which one is better for you? And for you, you might say, well, I don't have anything. It's not, I don't worship gods. Well, I mean, really, let's look. What does it mean to worship God and God anyway? It means whatever you basically listen to, whatever path you take, it's based on certain beliefs and certain things that you are following. That is what dictates your life. Whatever principles dictate your life. Where did you get that from? And I know for myself, I mean, although I grew up a Muslim, I was born a Muslim, and I struggled with my prayer when I was in high school. But what was ruling my life was not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What was ruling my life is how my family wanted me. I wanted to make sure that they're happy with me, how my society wanted me to be, kind of like following the roles of how teenagers should be, how I wanted to look, how my ego wanted. That's what I was following. I was following these things, what the social structure wanted, the culture wanted. They designed the path that I had to go on. My ego designed the path that I wanted to go on. It was these kinds of things. And whatever was okay or not okay by the family, and it doesn't have to always align with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, but that's what I did.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, because that line, it says, so many masters. It didn't say gods, and like you're saying, masters can be interpreted more very widely. Like, who is your master? Who are you trying to serve? Or who is ruling your life is your master, right? It could be people, it could be ideals, it could be politics, it could be all these things. And those things, they really do weigh you down, and they confuse you, and trying to please so many different things is overwhelming, and you get lost in your perspective and what your values are, because you're trying to, like, this got to be different things to different people, or different masters, right? And it's hard to satisfy them all. It is a blessing just to make it simple, just Allah. That's it.
100%. For me, I remember it was a moment. It was literally a moment for me where I was able to see that, oh my God, it's just like what a life it is to connect and know that there's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you need to submit to. And it was that moment when you saw that, you felt it. The realization of Allah was there. I mean, it wasn't what I'm talking about. It's that one moment when I saw that. It's like life was different. My prayer was different. I woke up the next day, it's like, Ya Rabbi, just keep this feeling that there is only one that is actually ruling my life, that I'm submitting to, that I have peace when I pray to, that I know that I am at peace and content because I'm taking directions just from Him.
Right. And I know, like, speaking for myself, the times in my life that I felt like I was spinning out of control were the times when I have lost myself, like myself, where I felt like I was paying all my attention to what everybody else wanted. And it's like you feel like you're spinning out of control. It's like, what did I need? What did I need to do for my work and my business or my career? What does my husband want out of me? What do my kids want out of me? What do my parents? What am I doing all these things for everybody? And I would feel like I was spinning out of control. And what got me back was really being able to just part that and say, okay, enough. Like, what does Allah want out of me? And reconnecting to God and just being like, what is my purpose here? My purpose, what is the purpose of Shaza in this world? And having that connection be strong and forget what everybody else, where I was feeling like I was being pulled, right, in all these different directions. And that happened a couple times in life. It's not like it's something that, I made this realization and it stayed forever. I dipped out of it. And I mean, I know recently I've been back into this phase in this past year or so of just being like, okay, come back, and what does Allah want out of Shaza? Like, what is this for me? Like, reconnecting and having that connection and that blessing and that contentment. Like when we were talking about earlier, just a few about finding, it's like that you're seeking that peace, because that's the only place we're going to find that peace. That's the only place I found peace. Despite all the responsibilities and all the pulling and the spinning and the work and all that, was connecting to Allah. And that's something that, we might go in and out of, right, throughout our life. It's not like it's always going to be steady, but you got to keep coming back to that.
Yeah. It gives you a solid core. Like really, it gives you a solid core. You're anchored. And that's what gives you the aspect of being a muhsin that we're talking about. Yeah.
It reminds me of when I'm doing anger management counseling with people, and like the more people who are worried about everybody's opinion of them and they keep adding to it, like everybody has to have a good opinion of them, and if they don't, they get upset. It's like if you just reduce and you really critically think about whose opinion really matters to you.
That's the point.
And if you distill it down to just Allah's opinion of me is the only thing that really matters, it empowers you to just disregard so many other things.
Yes. Yeah. And really, we have to always remind ourselves of just the blessing of Islam, right? And just to be thankful and grateful that Allah gave us this blessing. And when we talk about and remember all these people as well that have gone through so many hardships, right? Trauma after trauma, whether it's Yusuf or what we see in the Mauritanian or what we're seeing around the world right now. And they say, Alhamdulillah. And so many of them remind us of, like, they say, Alhamdulillah ala ni'mat al-Islam, like, thank God for the blessing of Islam, that we have this to rely on and to just hang on to, because that's what's going to get us through it. And it's being able to choose that blessing and remind yourself of that blessing and, and want it, right?
Yeah. And it's not like it happens when you want it. You have to cultivate this. This has to be something that you're constantly trying to remind yourself to be in this mode and to put yourself there and choose to be there. Every day you got to work at this so that when the crisis does happen, like, you're already there. You don't have to like try to scramble to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. So towards the end, after Sayyidina Yusuf talked about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he instilled this aspect of them, as if he is trying to tell them, hey, listen, whatever is happening to you, because we know, one of them, he even delivers the information that one of them is going to be killed. Whatever happens, happens. But stick to the bigger picture. This is what's going to have you feel fulfilled in whatever capacity you live. That's the most important one. So that's where that's what he delivered to them, and he spent like the majority of the part in prison was about this aspect in the Quran, and then he delivers the message to them of what's going to happen, and just he delivered like this is what's going to happen. This is the way it is.
He was kind of he was savage when he delivered that. He just kind of dropped it on him. Like, by the way, you're gonna die. Oh, he just
Yeah.
kind of. There's no. I don't
And by the
know.
way, subhanallah, although it's clear, right? It's clear who is who from the dreams. He didn't say you and you. He said one of you and the other one. He just kept it kind of. Although, I mean, if you think about it, you'd know, right? But it's interesting, as you said. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think, Nadia, you should talk about as well in part of the surah when, that Yusuf also, he just wasn't resigned to himself being in jail and being in his predicament, right? He worked and he asked to try to get out, right? Like he was trying to move
Yes.
things along here for himself and help
Yes.
himself as well.
Yes, that's a really good point. And I mean, and there's so much that you can get out of this aspect, by the way, either way. Because what happens is that there was one who was going to be the giving drinks to the being the one who gives drink to the king. So actually, Yusuf alayhi salam approached him and he said, وَقَالَ لِلَّذِي ظَنَّ أَنَّهُ نَاجٍ مِّنْهُمَا. He said to the one who he thought he's going to be saved from them, اذكرني عند ربك. Mention me in front of your master. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَأَنْسَاهُ الشَّيْطَانُ ذِكْرَ رَبِّهِ. So the shaitan made him forget, the devil made him forget the mentioning Yusuf in front of his master. فَلَبِثَ فِي السِّجْنِ بِضْعَ سِنِينَ. So he stayed in the prison few more years, right? Just like, subhanAllah, it's so interesting. I'm just like now occurring to me, it's like what happened to the Mauritanian. Although he was proven to be like he's innocent, yet he stayed for 4 more years. It's as if, subhanAllah, it's as if there is a plan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to permit that. There's some wisdom that you can't see right away. And for you, every single logic says, why am I staying here? Why isn't this working? I tried, I worked on it, I asked. And as you said, Shaza, you have to do all your best. You have to move, you have to seek. But also simultaneously, you have to know, you have to give it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, I seek, Ya Rabbi, but I know that what you plan is the best plan. And sure enough, for Yusuf alayhi salam, he could have just gone out normally. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a better plan for him. He wanted him to get out in a grand coming for people to know who he is. It occurs just like, why, Ya Rabbi, I had to stay for few more years? Why? There is a reason. Whatever that reason is, we may not see it right away. That's why my dad always says something very beautiful. He says, and he repeats it every single time something happens. It's like, if you were to see the future, you would choose what's happening right now. لو اطلعتم على الغيب لاخترتم الواقع. And if you start tracking your life and look at things, how they happen, and if you're really fair, you will see that path in your life.
Yeah.
That's such a hard pill to swallow when you're in something so difficult.
I hear you. Yep.
It only happens when you're older that you get to reflect on
True.
what has happened in your life, and to see that there is this, something better turned out. But when you're young and you're trying to go through something and you don't have that benefit of being able to look back and saying, well, it did turn out for the best eventually.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if how people can get there except for with time.
Yeah, it's as we said, the combination of everything. There is no one is saying that you're going to be happy. In tough times, in traumatic times, you're going to be sad, and that is very normal, very real. Yet at the same time, what you cultivate, when you develop your core with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's going to be what's going to benefit you in these times. And you have to develop that trust in a way where later on you will see it. Absolutely. It's really work in progress. It's a growth thing that you don't get in a moment, but the journey of it is very rewarding, and it's very rich.
Yeah.
At least to say.
I think this is what gives elders and people who've been through difficult things and came out the other side, it gives them that that ability because they've
True.
done it, and it's just a reality for them.
And to your point, though, to this, I'm not kind of like to add to this point, though. If you really put in the effort and the work in your youth, you don't have to wait to be an elder. I mean, really, I was so inspired the other day. It's like to one of those close people around me who, she's dealing with something, and people are trying to give her. It's like, why don't you just take this shortcut? Why don't you try this? She says, no, if Allah out of everybody chose me to go through this test, I am not going to bypass it. He wants something out of this, and I'm going to go through it because this is what is meant to be. It's kind of like it was an illegal way to bypass it. She says, no, I'm not going to do that. If Allah wanted me not to go through this, He would have not had me go through this. A 24-year-old saying this, I was like, subhanAllah.
Wow,
How
that's impressive.
amazing it is to be able, if you really get to learn this and cultivate this in your youth and in your teen years, and that's why I have such a passion for teens, because if you get to understand this in your younger age, you develop that and you have it for the rest of your life. You have a different life. It's a different outlook on life. You don't have to wait till you're 50 and 60 and an elder. Don't do that.
Yeah. And we have to trust that whenever there is a delay, that it was for the good, right? There's something
Absolutely.
good coming out of it for you, for others, something. Things are in the works, right? And, we're going to discuss this more in detail in the next episode and delve into this as we continue on with the story of Yusuf. But for the time being, we want our listeners to think about the following questions and the following scenarios until we get to the next episode. So I want you to think about when someone wronged you, and no matter what you did, your image is distorted, no matter how you try to rectify it. Your initial reactions are full of pain and hurt. And you have to go through all those feelings, right? And yes, there might be actions you have to take to clear your name, but how do you deal with that internally? So you don't build up that resentment and anger, but rather trust that it is happening for you, that it's happening for a reason. So think about that. Times that have happened to you in the past, or you might be going through this right now. And how are you dealing with this? And then 2, when you just can't make sense, why is this happening to you? There is something you're not seeing, but God has a greater plan. Allah controls everything, and there's a bigger part that you need to trust, that you need to surrender to. This is the time when you have to come back to Allah and really hold on to Him. Be connected to your core, your purpose, and not fall into the endless thoughts of why me, why me, why me? That victim sort of mentality that we've been, discussing throughout this whole story of Surah Yusuf. Actually, a lot of it comes back to that. It's a lot about mindset, and so we want you to take these, till the next episode and think about these situations where you either have been in it or are in it right now, and how are you dealing with this struggle? And just remember where we're at with Surah Yusuf. So until the next episode, think about this, internalize it, and we look forward to seeing you and continuing the story with Surah Yusuf. And in our next episode, we're going to be really delving into then his reconnection with the wife of the Aziz and this interaction that kind of happens. And, how he overcomes it and how he gets through it. It's a really dynamic discussion that we're going to have on our next episode. So we'll see you, inshallah, next time at Timeless Conversations. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
If you like listening to our conversation about the Quran, imagine how much more you would get out of participating in a live conversation about the Quran with Dr. Nadia and a room full of people engaging with the Quran. Join us at our next in-person Seeds of Wisdom retreat, online with our weekly Quran and Me sessions, or for the youth at one of our